Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm JR, and we are going to talk about some performance tiers from the Big Ten teams in week 3. Do this every week, go through and it's almost like a grade of the performance for every single Big Ten team. How did they do? How did they look? Some of these are kind of to expectations. Some of these are kind of just where the score was so big, you can't really not say that a team didn't play well. And so, again, it's the out of conference. We have a number of some low-level teams, so we got a lot of teams in the elite category. This tends to change much more once you start facing other conference opponents, and once you start to get into more difficult play, and you'll see that from the teams that played more difficult opponents and lost in this one a little bit further down into the tier 4 concerning and the tier 5 awful, more than we've had the past 2 weeks. So let's go ahead and start with Michigan. Michigan wins 63-0. They were up 35-3 at the end of the first half. Bryce Young, I hate that I do that. Bryce Underwood struggled to throw the ball downfield a little bit. He was a little inaccurate with some of that stuff, and I think he was making mistakes. There was a ball thrown into triple coverage at one point. I believe it was the of the game was almost intercepted. So, there were some different things like that. But overall, Michigan dominated this game. Central Michigan has a new coaching staff, so they did what they were supposed to do. I was a little concerned with the injuries of Michigan and Biff Poggi and what that was going to look like. But turns out the best thing that ever happened to Bryce Underwood's all-around game was for Biff Poggi to become the head coach for a little bit, because Bryce Underwood used his legs so much more in this game. It was really interesting to see. Bryce Underwood finishes the game 16 of 25, 235 yards, and 1 passing touchdown. He also had 2 touchdowns on the ground and ran for 114 yards. So not exactly the passing stats you would think you'd see from a 63-point outing from a team, but definitely the rushing stats in there to help with that a lot. So Michigan elite in week 3. Moving on to Oregon. Oregon faces Northwestern. You could knock Oregon for late in the game, allowing Northwestern to score those 14 and getting rid of the cover. I personally did not. The majority of the game, they were elite. They were excellent in everything they were doing. Dante Moore throws for less than 200 yards, but he's still able to toss the ball around. 16 of 20, operating this Wilstein offense the way that he needs to. The freshman Hill Jr., he rushes for almost 100 yards, 94 yards, and 1 touchdown. Oregon cruised in this one. Northwestern, they're kind of continuing to struggle with a lot of the similar stuff offensively that we thought they might struggle with at the beginning of the year, and kind of that we've seen at the beginning of the year as well. So credit to Northwestern. You scored 14 points at the end of the game, but that was too little, too late. All you did was, get rid of the spread, get rid of the cover or whatever. So Oregon, even though they let up the points late, still going to call them elite in that one. Nebraska. Well, it's no 68-0, but this will do. Nebraska win 9-7 over Houston Christian. They as well 38. I guess 5, but they score 38 points in the first half, 38-0. Houston Christian does put a touchdown on the board there in the third quarter, but at that point in time, it was kind of over for the starter. Dylan Raiola, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dane Key had a 104 yards for him. Exactly what you want to see from Nebraska. You could have thought of maybe a little bit more scoring, but at the end of the day, these are just style points, so we're not going to get too hung up over that. Nebraska looks like a juggernaut right now with everything they're doing, the way they're operating right now as a program. We'll see what happens once they start facing some more difficult competition. That Cincinnati game, they still only won by a few points. So I think some people might hold on to that a little bit. But overall, these past 2 weeks against Nebraska and Houston Christian, they've done everything they're supposed to do and more, which gives you good confidence going into the conference play coming up here. All right, next up we have Indiana Friday night game. Oh boy. Remember when Purdue beat Indiana State 45-0 last year, and then went on to not win a single game? And we're like, wow, Indiana State must be really bad. Well, it's not exactly what this is, because Indiana's not going to go on and not win a single rest of their game. But holy cow, they destroyed Indiana State in this one, 73-0. Fernando Mendoza, only 1 incompletion, 19 of 20, 270 yards, 5 touchdown passes. The third string running back, Martin, 11 carries, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Omar Cooper Jr. ties the record for the most touchdown receptions in a single game for Indiana. He had 207 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns for Omar Jr. I really like the way this offense is running at this point. I feel like they're coming more into themselves. Obviously, they've not faced the most difficult out of conference schedule, but Old Dominion did just, blow out Virginia Tech. So maybe there's something there with that team that needs to be considered a little bit more. That was a closer game than I think some Indiana fans wanted it to be. But, rest assured, this is kind of what we saw from Indiana last year in against Florida International, and I think this Old Dominion team is no doubt better than Florida International last year was. So you got to give Old Dominion credit there. Kennesaw State, they're not about either. I mean, they're a group of 5 teams, not some team that's going to be 1-11 this year or anything like that. So good out of conference for Indiana. Capped it off with a 73-0 here and looked elite in doing so. Next, Iowa. Iowa answers some of the questions. They win this one 47-7. Mark Gronowski, 179 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't really do a whole lot on the ground. Iowa's leader was McNeil, 10 carries, 56 yards. But Gronowski did add 12 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And Phillips had a 45-yard reception, I believe, on the second play of the game. It was so you saw Iowa getting out there, throwing the ball early. You could tell this is definitely something they wanted to emphasize and get better at, and they're going to have to do that against Rutgers. Now, Rutgers has struggled to stop the run in some scenarios. Even first week, it was against Ohio with the running quarterback, so maybe that means something for Gronowski here if he can use his legs, similar to how Parker Navarro did against them. But overall, this was what you wanted to see from Iowa and more. Zach and I had a conversation about how they need to score over 40 points. They scored over 40 points. They held UMass to only 7 points, and we're gonna give them credit where credit is due. 47-7 here for Iowa. Elite performance. Next, and this is probably the one that was the most. Should it be elite? Like the score says it's elite. 52-6. Villanova doesn't score until the fourth quarter. But it was only 21-0. I know, and I'm saying only 21-0. This is one of those games where the expectations come into play, right? Because if this was any other team, 52-6, yeah, that's elite against an FCS team. That's elite. But when you're Penn State, you're hoping that Drew Allar would be more on point than he has been. 16 of 29 in this game, 209 yards, only 1 touchdown pass. He checked the ball down again a whole lot more. If you know my guy, the Penn State guy who's in the chat, and he has been on a couple videos, or at least one video, I think. He's been going on and on about it. Harrison Wallace right now is the receiving leaders in college football. That's what we heard. We heard that Penn State didn't have, any receivers last year. And I pushed back on that a little bit, but I also understood it. When you don't have any receivers get a reception in a playoff game, that's troublesome. But I got to tell you, Harrison Wallace does not look like a bad wide receiver right now in the SEC over there at Ole Miss. He looks like a pretty doggone good one. With a backup quarterback today, he still got his numbers. So this is an interesting situation for Penn State. Obviously, you move on. You're having Oregon in 2 weeks, so it's fine. But I'd like to see what happens in this bye week and what kind of stuff can be addressed. If we don't see Drew Allar throwing the ball downfield more often in a much adjusted way, he threw the ball downfield at times last year, but it always felt kind of, not always, many times it felt kind of forced, right? I don't want to see that. I want to see Drew Allar, rip the seam when he has a guy running up the middle, when he has a guy and quarterback is coming from zone coverage and he's trying to recover. Throw it up to the guy. Trust your receivers to let him go make a play. I don't know if he just doesn't trust his receiver. I don't know if it's just hesitation, what it is, but Drew Allar is still not throwing the ball down the field. I think as much, I shouldn't say he's not throwing it down the field at all. He is somewhat, but he's not throwing it down the field as much as I think he should. And that's definitely something that gives me some concern for Penn State. But, awesome defensive performance. Jim Knowles is fantastic. Luke Reynolds, 73 yards. He's really coming on as a tight end for this team. Katron Allen had 86 yards with a touchdown carry. So, you can't really complain too much if you're a Penn State fan. It's just it's those complaints that you get from teams that are expecting a national championship type of season, right? You're nitpicking everything. You want to see everything. I'm guilty of it doing it with these kind of teams. I've done it with Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. It's just, it kind of comes with the territory when you bring enough guys back to try and win it all. So, all right, let's get to the satisfied category. I had Ohio State in the satisfied category. Game was 13-3 time. Ohio scores in that one early in the second half. The score was 13-9 at one point in this game. Not what you want to see, right? I mean, when you're Ohio State, you wanted to really kind of take care of things against the Ohio Bobcats, and there were some people, including myself, out there kind of saying like, this is kind of a team that might have a little bit of playoff talk and could be kind of similar to the Boise State Oregon game last year. Maybe not as close, but there could be a little bit of that iffy nature in there. And long and behold, we saw a little bit of that. Now, a little bit of that was more due to red zone inefficiency from Ohio State than anything else. It wasn't so much that they weren't able to move the ball or they weren't able to stop Ohio. It was the fact that they had drops in the end zone because coverage, and there were some throws by Julian Sayin that were catchable, but not exactly the best throws I think that we have come to expect from Julian Sayin in his time. So young, third start as a redshirt freshman quarterback in Julian Sayin. He's got really good wide receivers. They'll be fine, but definitely something I couldn't necessarily put in the elite category. Illinois 38-0. Looks like an elite score, but they only scored 10 points in the first half. Slow start for them. Offensive line struggled in this one. Allar, he was really good to me for most of the game. At the beginning was a little questionable here and there, but I thought that was more due to the offensive line stuff. He was getting out of the pocket. He was making things happen with his legs. And so, I think Allar's going to get some pushback here. He only had 196 yards and 2 touchdowns, but I don't think Illinois is asking him to do much more than that. They're trying to keep him on schedule, keep things going, and just get the ball to guys like Hank Beatty and try to get the ball to guys like Caden Fagan, who can go out there and get you yards. Fagan had 100 yards, 1 touchdown in this game. They did not have Aiden Lawfrey, and I think that affected them early. So Luke Altmaier did what you asked him to do, and the offensive to keep improving and start picking up some of these blitzes better. And they need to get rid of the slow starts. You're not gonna win against Indiana if you have a slow start and they come out firing early in that one. It's just not going to be conducive for a win for you. So satisfied with Illinois, but could be better. USC 33-17 over Purdue. This game was a bit closer than I think some people be. I believe I predicted 38-21, so I felt pretty good about it. Purdue did not make it as close as you might think to make this satisfied, but what they did do is they did get into the red zone multiple times. Credit to USC. They were able to stop them in the red zone. So there's obviously credit there, but at the same time, you would like to see Purdue not move the ball that much on USC. So I gave USC a satisfied here. At the end of the day, they won on the road. They've had their road woes. It seems like Lincoln Riley's figured that out, and they had the lightning delay as well, which really probably impacted things for USC to get out of it with a win. I'm satisfied. I don't think anything bad about USC after this one, but I'm also not going to call them elite. So Ruckers against Norfolk State. Ruckers gives up a field goal in the first half, 26-3. They give up 7 points in the third quarters, and that's where Norfolk would stop scoring for the game. Athen Caliac 300 plus passing yards, a touchdown pass. Raymond, the running back, who last time I checked was the highest graded running back in the Big Ten. Really good stuff there. I was concerned about Kyle Monungai, him leaving, what that would look like, and Rutgers just continues to, put these good running backs out there. So props to them. It's really adding team when you have the wide receivers, DT Sheffield, KJ Duff, Ian Strong, and then you are able to add a really good running back in the mix as well. So good stuff there. I like that. Athen Caliac Manis, only 1 touchdown pass, but he was overall good in the game from what I saw. And only reason I don't have elite is just because I wanted to see the defense pitch a shutout. against an FCS, Norfolk State. You've known the defensive issues. I wanted to see pitch a shutout for at least the first 3 quarters, right? You have the second team in there. Maybe things change, but Norfolk got a field goal. They also got a touchdown in the third quarter. If they were able to pitch a shutout for at least quarters, they probably would have been elite. But that's kind of my nitpicky there thing for Ruckers. So right on the line, Maryland gets this one. 44-17. Can't really give you an elite status when you give up 17 points to an FCS team. So I had Maryland, even though they got the win and blew them out. Malik Washington, 261 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Octavian Smith had over 100 receiving yards in this game. Even though they get the win and they do a good job, 17 points in the second half. There were some backups in and stuff like that, but still, this is Towson. This is an FCS team that's, okay. I don't think they're necessarily bad or anything like that, but they're okay for FCS. And, would have liked to see maybe 10 points or less in this one for Maryland to flirt more with that elite status, but they were nowhere near questionable for me. Solidly in the satisfied status. All right, getting into the questionable status, I have Purdue. Purdue is questionable after scoring 17 points against USC, and I think some people will have a problem with this. I think some people will say coming away from Purdue, you should be satisfied, but I think Barry Odom has raised the bar here at Purdue a little bit. I think some people are still hanging on to this Purdue team as, what they were last year. But I think if you're a Purdue fan, you're like, yeah, okay, we were close in this one, and that's good. But are we going to get to the red zone and throw an interception 3 times again in the future? Are we going to rely on kind of weird plays that the ball just bounces right for us? You see that play where the ball bounced right, Ryan Brown picked it up and ran. Are we going to rely on those type of things to score? So I'm not trying to knock Purdue too much here, but I do see some things that kind of gives me a little bit of concern. I think Purdue can be a bowl team. I think they can get themselves to that spot. It's going to be tough. There are some good teams on this schedule that they're going to have to face, some really good teams on the schedule that they're going to have to face. But to say that they can't make a bowl is inaccurate to me. A lot of things can happen in college football, and Purdue is growing. They're a disciplined team. They're a good team. And I think this game could have been a little bit closer, and that's why I have it in the questionable category. Michigan State, they allow 24 points to Youngstown. They did score 41, kind of got the late game score there to put it over the top, but it was 34-24 late into the game, only a 2-score game for Michigan State. And Youngstown State scored at least once in every quarter of this game, 3-7-7-7. I coming off the Boston College game with them losing to Stanford, I don't necessarily have as much hype about Michigan State as I did before. Still feel good about the win, still feel good about certain things, but the number of injuries in this game also impacted things. You had Youngstown State put up 24 points. If I'm not mistaken, Brungard did not run Brungard, I apologize. He didn't run for all the yards like I thought he would. Like if this was a game where he was just kind of running all over the place, kind of like Parker Navarro did for Ohio against Rutgers, I might have been a little bit more lenient and put it in the satisfied category, but he did throw on him, and Jaden Gilbert had a touchdown run in this one. Brungard had 2 touchdown passes. Just gave me a little bit of concern. So I didn't want to put them necessarily in the satisfied category, but they're nowhere near the concern category after this one. There's just a few questions about the secondary that I have, and maybe some questions about the running game if Mekhi Frazier is going to have to be out for a little while. And even in this one, he averaged less than 2 yards per carry. Mekhi Frazier did. So the running game needs to be better. Especially against a FCS opponent that should not be giving you as much trouble as Youngstown State did. All right, let's move on. The concerning category, Wisconsin. I would have liked to see them be more competitive in this one. I think the score actually makes it look like the game was closer than it actually was. Not a good game for Wisconsin. I was on record saying if Wisconsin goes 5-7, I don't think they fire Luke Fickell. I think I'm going to retract that. If they go 5-7, I think they fire Luke Fickell. Now, we don't have all the details on the buyout. I think that kind of impacts things, so don't hold me to that because I just don't know. But if they go 5-7 this season, I think they look to move on from Luke Fickell. There's been some buzz about their NIL that's possibly been getting better over the past few years, and it's possible with some better NIL that might be a more attractive destination for some higher level. More than maybe the fans might think it is. This is the top half of the Big Ten coaching job, in my opinion. And with the with the better NIL and everything, this should not be happening to Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin kind of got blown out by Ohio State, back when they were doing really well in the Big Ten, but there were other teams on the road they were facing, and they're not beating Power 4 teams right now. If this was happening just with Alabama and you were still winning, 7-8 games a season and you were defeating Power 4 opponents, okay, like it sucks, but we can live with this. When you're not even defeating Power 4 opponents on the regular, I think Luke Fickell is something like 8 of 13 against Power 4 opponents in his time since he's been at Wisconsin. I know he's had some tough schedules, and I know this schedule is going to be really tough here, but if you're Wisconsin, you have to move on. I think if you don't get to 6-6 this season, and even if you get to that, but the injuries are becoming a trend as well. Renfro not playing in this one. It's just concerning things for Wisconsin and concerning things for Luke Fickell right now. Northwestern, I mean, I put concerning, but I've been concerned about their offense for a while, right? Like this is kind of what their offense is. You score 14 points and the help make things look a little bit better, but overall, I mean, anybody who's watching this game, any Northwestern fan who's watching this game, this isn't satisfying to you. This isn't the David Braun that you had a few years ago when the team was expected to win 2 or 3 games, if that, and they ended up winning 8 games in a bowl game, including a bowl game. So I think Northwestern's in a whole lot of trouble. Zach Lujan's in trouble, and for all we know, David Braun might be in trouble at this point as well. Concerning season for Northwestern so far. We'll see if they can bounce back, but concerning. Minnesota loses to Cal. Drake Lindsey struggled in this one. Second Potele outplayed him. He was the true freshman quarterback, and really the concern came when Cal started running the ball much better against this Minnesota team. Now, Minnesota gave him a good fight early. At one point, they were up 14-10 in the third quarter, so you like to see that, but overall, once Cal started being able to run the ball in this one, Minnesota, they didn't have the guys in the secondary to keep up with Cal. And now I think Cal is a better football team than we were giving them credit for before. But they went down and they had multiple drives in this game where they were able to drive the entire field. And I thought Minnesota's defense was better than what they showed in this one. I didn't think Minnesota was going to let Cal do that. Cal had drives of 7 plays. 6 plays for a touchdown, 10 plays for a touchdown, and 10 plays for a field goal. They were just long, sustaining drives in this game that, hard to get through. And then Minnesota, the muff punt by Coy Parrish, the missed field goal to begin the fourth quarter. I mean, that was a 12-play, 46-yard drive. That took time off the clock. 12 plays, 46 yards, nearly 6 minutes off the clock, and you come away empty in that one. If you're going to be a team like this in Minnesota that's going to, take the time of possession and really milk the kind of stuff, you've got to finish. Even if it's just a field goal, you have got to finish. And unfortunately for Minnesota, they went through some of the woes of not being able to finish their field goals in this one. So concerning for Minnesota from the sense of this is not what Zach was talking about, like 10 wins at one point for Minnesota. You're not going to get to 10 wins this season. 8 wins is the goal in my mind. 7 wins you should probably be happy with, in my opinion. But this is, if the defense is not going to be what we thought this defense could, you're running into some trouble. Even if Drake Lindsey is fantastic, you're running into some trouble. Finally, UCLA, I don't really have all that much on them. They were awful. They suck. Sorry, Deshaun Foster is not a very good head coach. I kind of feel bad for him. He was put in a terrible situation. Nico Iamaleava, he throws for 217 yards, a touchdown pass. Mikey Matthews catches 3 balls for 67. I mean, there's some stuff here that, shows that UCLA has talent. But overall, this is not a well-coached team. This is not a disciplined team. I believe 13 penalties in this game. This is a team that just right now, it's not good. And I would not be surprised at all if Monday morning we wake up and we see a report Sean Foster is fired or anything like that. If it's going to happen in the middle of the season, it's probably going to happen this week because of the bye week and everything else that UCLA has. I believe UCLA is on a bye this week. Yeah, they're on a bye, and then they get Northwestern on September 27th. So if it happens, it's probably happening this week. If not, we'll see how it goes, but troublesome for UCLA in this one. And I guess there's always after Indiana, they have a bye week there, so that could happen as well if they're 0 what's that, 5 games? Yeah, if they're 0-8. But I don't think you want to get to 0-8 to fire your head coach. So that's what I got. Performance tiers in the Big Ten for week 3. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. What do you think? If you're on podcast, give us a 5-star review, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Really appreciate you all watching. Really appreciate you all subscribing to the channel, supporting us. It means a whole lot. And we love to bring you guys the best Big Ten football content, coming out and covering every single Big Ten team, not picking and choosing, but actually covering every single Big Ten team, giving you thoughts, takeaways, analysis, what we learned, things like that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a good one.